The shrill ringing stabbed through my sleep. 3 a.m. The clock's green digits burned into my retinas, a taunt in the gloom. Who in gosh's name? I groped for the phone, the jarring vibration a persistent assault on my groggy senses. Yeah. I mumbled, my voice a gravelly rasp. Dad? It's Liam. A cold fist clenched around my insides. Liam and late-night calls were a dangerous combination. What is it, son? Everything okay? Fine, great, actually. Listen, I need to run something by you. His forced levity, too bright, too brittle, sent a shiver down my spine. It usually preceded a request I'd rather swallow glass than grant. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments section where you are listening from. My name is Thomas Reed. I'm 61 years old. I hauled myself upright, the room's frigid air prickling my skin. All right, Liam, lay it on me. A pause, a faint shuffle as he switched the phone to his other ear. So, you know how Sarah and I have been knee-deep in wedding plans? I've gleaned as much, I replied, instantly regretting the curtness. Sarah, bless her heart, had been flooding my inbox with Pinterest boards, rustic barns, cascading floral arrangements, for months. Well, we've hammered out the details. Venue secured, caterer locked down, photographer, the whole shebang. That's wonderful, Liam. Congratulations. The words felt like lead weights in my mouth. Yeah, it's going to be epic, Dad. Exactly Sarah's vision. The sugary tone grated. Small wrinkle, though. Here it comes. I steeled myself. Wrinkle? Yeah, well, turns out, epic and vision come with a steeper price tag than we bargained for. A nervous chuckle crackled through the line. Significantly steeper, actually. I waited, the silence stretching. So, Dad, we were hoping you could, lend a hand. Lend a hand? The phrase dripped with incredulity. Yeah, with the festivities. Financially. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, right? And Sarah deserves the moon. My blood began to heat. Just how much of a hand are we talking, Liam? I asked, my voice dangerously level. He cleared his throat, the sound amplified in the quiet room. Well, the initial quote is around, 80 grand. 80,000. The sum resonated, a deafening echo in the cramped space. $80,000. For a single shindig. 80,000. I choked out. The simmering blood reached a rolling boil. Yeah, well, like I said, dream wedding. Top shelf bar, ice swan, Dove release, the works. Dove release. My grip on the phone tightened, knuckles aching. Liam, do you have any conception of what $80,000 represents? Of course, Dad. But think of it as an investment. In our future happiness. An investment? I snorted. Liam, I financed your education, your vehicle, your insurance, your wardrobe, your everything for 22 years. Where was my return then? Silence. I could practically feel him wilting on the other end. Dad, please don't do this right now. Do what? State facts. Remind you that I've been slaving away since I was your age, meticulously saving for my twilight years, and you expect me to simply fork over 80,000 for a frivolous celebration? It's not frivolous, Dad. It's significant. It's about laying a solid foundation. Laying a foundation? What about the decades I spent building yours? Did you ever consider the sacrifices I endured? The words exploded, fueled by years of suppressed resentment. Years of prioritizing Liam's wants over my needs. Years of pinching pennies while Richard Sterling, my nemesis since adolescence, flaunted his affluence. Dad, just, mull it over, okay? Consult Mom. We're counting on you. The forced cheer had evaporated, replaced by a pleading tone. "I'll consider it," I replied, the words sharp and devoid of warmth. "And don't bother calling at 3 a.m. again." I disconnected, the click reverberating in the stillness. I collapsed back onto the mattress, fixated on the ceiling, the clock's digits still glowing like judgmental eyes. $80,000. The tab for Liam's fantasy. The cost of my devotion. The wedding. Sarah Sterling. Richard Sterling's daughter. A chill permeated my bones. This wasn't solely about finances. There was something more sinister at play. This was about Richard Sterling winning, even now, from beyond the pale. I shut my eyes, but sleep remained elusive. The throbbing of old angers, long suppressed, coursed through me, disrupting my equilibrium. The specters of past injustices, of lost opportunities, of a life lived under Richard Sterling's shadow, materialized to torment me. And in the profound darkness, a scheme began to coalesce. A scheme both spiteful and cathartic, a scheme that would give Liam pause regarding his expectations, and a scheme that might, just might, finally relegate Richard Sterling to his rightful place. The price of dreams. Sleep played hide-and-seek, a game I lost at 4:17 a.m., according to the digital display. Liam's impending nuptials, Sarah Sterling. The whole situation fermented in my stomach, a toxic brew of stale coffee and regret. I descended the stairs, seeking solace in the coolness of the floor tiles against my skin. I needed a strategy, something beyond the petty pleasure of unsettling Richard Sterling. This wasn't solely about him, it was for Liam's sake. About the spoiled, individual he'd morphed into. He hadn't always been this way. I recalled his first, unsteady steps across the living room rug, his face radiant with accomplishment. Then, the countless soccer practices, the bloody knees, those last-minute hardware store dashes for science projects. School plays, awkward adolescence, the hand-me-down car I aided him in procuring, a relentless outflow of funds. Memories that once sparked genuine pleasure now resembled monetary exchanges, each brick fortifying the fortress of entitlement he'd constructed around himself. The concept of personal cost, of the sheer effort required to sustain his accustomed lifestyle, seemed lost on him. That settled it. He was due for a rude awakening. A stark financial reckoning for the investment I'd poured into his life. He craved a fairy tale wedding. Very well. He'd learn the true cost of such fantasies first. I planted myself at the kitchen table, the only sound the refrigerator's quiet thrum. I opened my laptop, the screen casting an eerie glow upon my face in the dim light. An Excel spreadsheet. Cold, calculating, and utterly unavoidable. I launched with the heavy hitters, university fees. Those 4 years at that elite institution. $120,000. A decent opening salvo. Then, the vehicle. A dependable, if slightly battered, Honda Civic. $8,000. Insurance for a novice driver. Best not to dwell. Next, the smaller, yet equally significant, expenditures. Orthodontics. Who could forget the metallic grin he flashed for 2 years? $6,000. Soccer gear, year upon year. Boots, shin guards, team shirts. It accumulates. Birthday celebrations. Yuletide gatherings. Summer programs. Each item a tiny pinprick of resentment. I dug deeper, unearthing ancient bank records and credit card statements. The spreadsheet inflated, a grotesque monument to years of parental devotion. Or, as Liam likely perceived it, an inexhaustible piggy bank. Time blurred. I meticulously documented every expense I could summon, every last dollar I'd spent on him. Sustenance. Clothing. Medical appointments. Field trips. The perpetual barrage of gadgets and trinkets he'd begged for, only to discard them moments later. It was draining, a painful audit of the past. As dawn approached, painting the horizon with vibrant hues, I concluded. The spreadsheet extended for what seemed like miles, a bewildering sea of figures. The sum total? $317,852. 47. I gazed at the number, a peculiar blend of fury and a twisted sense of fulfillment coursing through me. It was an exorbitant figure, far exceeding my initial estimations. More than Liam could possibly fathom. I initiated the printing process. Each page emerged from the printer with a distinct, decisive sound. I collected the stack, the warm paper in my grasp. This wasn't about recouping the funds. I understood that. It was about opening his eyes. About forcing him to confront the reality underpinning his expectations. About instilling in him the importance of diligence and self-denial. I addressed an envelope to Liam, carefully placing the invoice inside. The price of dreams, I inscribed on the front. Then, I appended a note. A concise sentence, rendered in my most precise penmanship: consider this your wedding present. Reimburse it as you see fit. The bill arrives. The laser-etched stack felt like lead in my hands, a physical manifestation of 26 years meticulously converted to figures. $317,852.47. A king's ransom, even I conceded, fixing on that sum one last time before sliding the invoice into a stout manila envelope. I addressed it to Liam, deploying my most formal hand, the one reserved for legal briefs and missives to the HOA. The trip to the post office was deliberate, a rejection of the mailbox's casual ease. I needed to witness its dispatch, a meager assertion of power in a situation spiraling beyond my control. The metallic thunk of the outgoing slot resonated in the sterile space, a sound of finality that both appeased and disturbed. Back at the house, emptiness echoed. The grandfather clock in the hall hammered out the seconds, each tick a countdown to Liam's response. I pictured the envelope's arrival, his initial bewilderment curdling into disbelief, then perhaps a begrudging comprehension. I imagined the call, his voice strained with outrage, demanding justification. I'd workshopped my reply countless times, each iteration a carefully sculpted argument aimed at puncturing his gilded existence. But the phone remained silent. I took refuge in the garage, feigning organization among my tools, a poor attempt to outrun the gathering storm of anticipation. The mingled scents of motor oil and sawdust, usually a bomb, offered little solace. My eyes kept straying to my phone, willing Liam's name to flash across the screen. Dinner passed in a strained quiet. The roast chicken, usually a favorite, tasted of nothing as I prodded it listlessly. Even Buster, my usually boisterous golden retriever, seemed to mirror my anxiety, resting his head heavily on my knee. A scratch behind his ears provided a fleeting comfort amidst the rising tide of unease. The evening crawled by, an endless expanse. News reports of distant conflicts and political wrangling blurred into the background. Liam, the unopened envelope on his counter, the oppressive quiet, these consumed my thoughts. By 10, the silence had become unbearable. I grabbed my jacket and sought refuge on the porch, the cool night air a welcome antidote to the stuffy atmosphere within. The porch swing groaned in a lonely rhythm, punctuated by the chirping of crickets. I should call, I reasoned. Just to ensure it arrived. But pride, that tenacious and familiar foe, held firm. I wouldn't be the one to yield. Sleep offered scant relief. I wrestled with fitful dreams, haunted by fragmented memories of Liam as a boy, his radiant eyes and infectious laughter a jarring contrast to the embittered man he'd become. Sarah Sterling's image flickered, her perfectly sculpted hair and calculating smile a constant reminder of the pernicious Sterling influence that had infiltrated my son's life. Morning brought no respite. No call, no text, no hint that Liam had even registered the bill's arrival. Online, the tracking information offered its curt confirmation: delivered. The silence had become a weapon, far sharper and more effective than any screamed accusation. It magnified my insecurities, chipped away at my resolve, and left me adrift in a sea of doubt. Had I overstepped? Had I irrevocably fractured our bond? Was this a calculated tactic, a sterling maneuver to dismantle me from within? I had no answers. And the uncertainty was slowly eroding my sanity. A mother's fury. The phone's ring was a serrated blade slicing through the evening's calm. Recognizing Sarah's number, I hesitated, battling the urge to ignore it. Liam's mother. My former wife. A woman whose voice could still turn my stomach. Swallowing hard, I answered. Sarah, I acknowledged, my tone neutral. Thomas Reed, she spat back, her animosity sharp enough to draw blood. What on earth do you think you're playing at? I imagined her, striding across her bright, art-laden salon, her blonde mane a disarrayed aureole. The face I'd once considered the epitome of beauty. I'm afraid I'm in the dark, I parried, a futile delay tactic. That invoice. That preposterous, insulting, demeaning bill you presented to Liam. Are you deliberately trying to alienate him? Her voice wobbled, riding the familiar edge of hysteria. Alienate him? Sarah, please. I'm trying to make him see. The words rang false, even to me. I clutched the device, my grip tightening. See what? By sending him some ledger of your supposed expenses. Do you believe that's the way to his heart? It's going to push him further away, Thomas. It already is. I flinched. That's not my intention. Then what is? To punish him for finding happiness? To instill guilt for enjoying a life you think he doesn't deserve? Because you're succeeding spectacularly. The room felt heavy, the air thick with unspoken accusations. I rose, moving to the window, gazing at the inky street. The very street where a young Liam, beaming, had first mastered his bicycle. A joy I'd apparently failed to cultivate. He needs to understand accountability, I murmured. Life isn't a perpetual free pass. Ah, so this is about Sarah Sterling, isn't it? You can't bear the thought of your son marrying into that dynasty. I could practically see her eyes narrowing with suspicion. It's more than just her, I conceded, though a part of me knew Richard Sterling's presence colored everything. A constant reminder of past failures and enduring bitterness. It's about Liam himself. About the path he's choosing. He's evolving into someone unrecognizable. He's content, Thomas. Can't you perceive that? He's finally found happiness. And you, in your infinite wisdom, are determined to ruin it. Just as you ruined everything else. The accusation hung like a shroud, oppressive and undeniable. That's unfair, Sarah. A weak retort, swallowed by the force of her fury. Is it? You were never content, Thomas. Not with me, not with your existence. You were always so calculating. So obsessed with profit and loss. You drained all the spontaneity from everything. I closed my eyes, her barb striking with unerring accuracy. There was truth there, a bitter draught I'd frequently consumed. He's marrying into the Sterling family, Sarah. Don't you comprehend the implications? He'll be consumed by their world. He'll vanish within their privilege and entitlement. He's marrying Sarah, Thomas. Not the Sterling family. She adores him. And he, her. Something you clearly wouldn't comprehend. Her voice dripped with a condescension that stung far more than any outright insult. I love Liam, I insisted, the words a desperate offering. Then demonstrate it. Cease this ludicrous pretense. Offer an apology. Express your joy for him. Embrace the role of the father he deserves. Silence descended, thick with years of unresolved grievances and lost opportunities. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. I don't know how, I confessed at last, the admission a ragged whisper. Then learn, Thomas. Learn before it's irreversible. Before you lose him entirely. She severed the connection, leaving me standing there, the phone vibrating faintly in my hand. The profound silence of the apartment amplified the reverberation of her words. Learn, she had urged. But how? How does one learn to embody a role never previously inhabited? How does one bridge a chasm that has widened insidiously over time? I stared out at the cityscape, a glittering panorama of indifference. A city that encompassed both my son and the daughter of my antagonist. A city that felt simultaneously immense and profoundly isolating. I was caught between my pride and my paternal love, with no clear path to freedom. $20. The envelope was a drab rectangle of manila, easily lost against the doormat. I almost shuffled past it reaching for the newsprint. Yet, its very ordinariness, the deliberate lack of distinction, snagged my attention. Blank face. Only my name, rendered in clumsy, blocky print that whispered of familiarity. I picked it up, the cheap paper rasped softly. Inside, a single fold. Unease, a cold spider, skittered up my spine as I unfolded it. A lone 20 stared back. Beneath it, a sentence, undeniably Liam's script, a start. The hallway air thickened, pressing against my chest. $20. Amidst the swirling figures that haunted my waking hours, the exorbitant cost of the wedding, decades of support payments, phantom interest, this paltry sum felt the most ludicrous, the most poignant. I sank onto the bottom step, the flimsy paper clutched tight. My mind balked at deciphering the intention. Defiance? A sardonic barb? Or, perhaps something else entirely? The bill felt strangely warm against my skin. I pictured Liam, likely emptying pockets, gathering meager resources. Imagined him hunched at his minimalist desk in that cold, modern space, consciously composing the note, addressing the envelope. A tempest of feeling churned within, anger, resentment, yet also a flicker of shame. Sarah's warning echoed, learn fatherhood before you lose it. Was this the chance? The last? I unfurled the bill, smoothing wrinkles with my thumb. Worn, faded, nearly translucent. It had traversed countless transactions, purchased countless trifles. Now, it sat here, emblematic of something more significant. Silence blanketed the house, broken only by the grandfather clock's measured pulse from the living room. I closed my eyes, striving for a sharp image of Liam. Not the polished, confident adult he'd become, but the small boy trailing me through the garden, face daubed with earth, forever curious. The boy who'd proudly offer dandelions, proclaiming them priceless jewels. Where had that child vanished? My eyes snapped open, the 20 still gripped in my hand. This wasn't about monetary value, naturally. It never had been. It was about acknowledgement. Recognizing shared history, flaws and all. Conceding my paternal shortcomings. The meager offering wouldn't fix broken bonds. It wouldn't magically repair years of estrangement. It wouldn't suddenly garner Sarah's forgiveness, or shift Liam's perspective. But it served as inception. A hairline fracture in the imposing wall I'd erected between my son and me. A nascent spark of hope, barely perceptible. I rose, legs protesting from the hard step. Crossing to the kitchen, I raided the junk drawer, unearthing a discarded frame, its glass webbed with a crack. With deliberate care, I placed the 20 inside, centering it as well as possible. It appeared ludicrous, a tattered scrap of currency displayed in damaged casing. Yet, as I leaned it against the counter, drenched in setting sunlight, it seemed to emanate a quiet, unexpected dignity. Perhaps this wasn't closure. Perhaps this marked the threshold of something different. A lengthy, arduous, uncertain path, yet a path nonetheless. A journey leading back toward my son. The sterling connection. The 20 felt like a lead weight in my jeans, a nagging reminder of the transaction to come. Focus. Equilibrium. Bellwether was due. The chime above Reed and Daughter Accounting, Sarah's name a ghostly echo on the glass, announced his arrival. Punctual as always, Marcus Bellwether entered, a symphony of muted tones. His suit, his tie, even the landscape of his face, or the weathering of hard truths witnessed. Only his gaze cut, sharp, calculating. "Read," he greeted, voice a gravelly undertone, extending a firm, bloodless hand. "Marcus. Thanks for seeing me." I motioned towards the creaking leather chair opposite my desk. The afternoon light rendered the office peculiarly clinical, highlighting the frantic dance of airborne dust. He settled, his eyes cataloging the organized chaos. "You wanted an update?" I leaned back, the chair's springs issuing a mournful complaint. "Yes. Liam's fiancée. Emily. Something. I need everything you have." A bitter taste coated my tongue. Marcus unfurled a slender dossier, its pristine pages a stark contrast against the desk's aged wood. Emily Sterling. The name landed like a punch to the gut. My breath caught. Sterling. Surely, there couldn't be two families of that name in this town. Sterling. You mean Richard Sterling? Marcus's gaze didn't waver. His daughter. The room seemed to lisp precariously. Richard Sterling. My perennial adversary. The man who'd snagged every advancement, every lucrative deal, every sliver of acknowledgement I'd ever coveted. In my mind, he embodied everything I lacked. And now, Liam was planning to marry into that lineage? "It's not possible," I rasped, the words a breath of disbelief. Marcus merely arched an eyebrow, a silent challenge to reality. He trafficked in facts, not feelings. He continued, his voice a steady cadence. Emily Sterling. 28. Brown, summa cum laude. Junior architect at Sterling Designs. A nearly imperceptible flicker crossed his features. Well regarded, respected. No scandals. No debts. No apparent complications. Each syllable struck like a small hammer. Liam, my son, was about to entangle himself with the Sterling Empire. My legacy, if one could call it that, would become inextricably linked to the man I'd spent a lifetime trying to eclipse. Background? I managed, my voice thick. Impeccable. Privileged, yes. Boarding schools, continental jaunts, the works. But also, philanthropic endeavors. Mentoring programs. By all accounts, a remarkably decent individual. Decent. Almost worse. A spoiled socialite would have been easier to dismiss. But a virtuous Sterling. The irony was a jagged pill I couldn't swallow. And, their relationship? With Liam? Appears genuine. Affectionate. 2 years. Friends describe them as deeply happy. Happy. The word reverberated in the still air, a cruel jest. Liam, content with Richard Sterling's daughter. A cosmic joke delivered with exquisite, agonizing precision. I massaged my temples, fighting off the burgeoning headache. Anything, negative? Anything at all. I was grasping at straws, hunting for some blemish, some flaw that would validate my growing animosity. Marcus paused, a hesitation so slight it was almost undetectable. Her mother passed 5 years ago. Cancer. It was difficult. She is close to her father, understandably. Close to her father. Unlike Liam and me. The thought was a twisting blade. I had failed as a father, and now my son was seeking comfort, and a wife, in the arms of my rival. That's all. My voice was flat. That's all you requested I uncover. Marcus snapped the file shut. My fee, as arranged. I scrawled a check, my hand betraying a slight tremor. He accepted it without comment, tucking it into his inner pocket. Thank you, Marcus. He gave a curt nod. Read. Then, he was gone, the bell over the door chiming once more, a final, discordant note in the symphony of my despair. I remained there, enveloped in the sterile quiet, the name Emily Sterling searing itself into my consciousness. The $20 bill in my pocket now felt like a physical burden. This wasn't just about Liam anymore. It was about Richard Sterling, about a lifetime of one-upmanship, about a suppurating wound that had just been wrenched open, wider and far deeper than ever. Years of rivalry. Richard Sterling. The name left a metallic tang on my tongue. To hear Marcus speak it, to see it tethered to Emily, to Liam, it felt like a blow landed with calculated cruelty after all this time. A bill, overdue and exorbitant, finally presented. My history with Sterling wasn't mere competition, it was a multi-front war, its battles echoing across decades, scarring me to the core. It began innocently enough, in the ivy-covered quadrangles of Dartmouth. Freshman year. I can still summon that season, the sharp scent of wood smoke in the air, the palpable buzz of potential thrumming through the student body. I intended to claim the world. So, too, did Richard Sterling. Both economics majors, both ambitious, both, convinced of our own brilliance. He possessed an effortless self-assurance that practically glowed. I, on the other hand, had to fight for every inch, fueled by an insatiable need for validation. He simply was. Our initial clash took place within the academic arena. We were locked in a dead heat for the coveted top spot in Professor Armitage's infamous econometrics seminar. I sacrificed sleep, fueled by stale coffee and the gnawing fear of failure. Sterling, meanwhile, seemed to glide through the complex models, effortlessly winning over Armitage during office visits. The final assessment was brutal. I emerged feeling as if I'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight champ. Sterling merely offered a knowing smile, his eyes gleaming. He earned the A+. I received an A. A solitary character separating triumph from second place. Then came the crew team. The Charles, a dark ribbon bisecting the cityscape, the synchronized dip and pull of the oars, the fire in my lungs, a grueling, elegant dance of agony and precision. I'd dedicated years to the sport, honing my skills since high school. Sterling, predictably, decided to try out during his sophomore year. Despite being a novice, he surpassed seasoned oarsmen within weeks. An innate athleticism, a deceptive power made the task seem almost casual. He usurped my place in the varsity boat, dismissing it as just a bit of diversion. A diversion for him, perhaps. The rivalry escalated exponentially after graduation. Sterling snagged a choice position at Goldman Sachs. I found myself relegated to a smaller outfit, laboring in obscurity. He ascended the corporate hierarchy with breathtaking speed, his name splashed across the pages of the Wall Street Journal, his image gracing the covers of influential magazines. I gritted my teeth, doubled my efforts, yet he always seemed to hold the advantage. Always. The source of the bitterness? More than just simple ambition. Pure, unadulterated envy. I coveted his inherent magnetism, his natural talent, his infuriating good fortune. I envied the ease with which opportunities seemed to gravitate towards him, the way success seemed to find him without conscious effort. He embodied everything I aspired to be, everything I believed I deserved. And then, Sarah entered the picture. We connected at a corporate gathering, a brief escape from the relentless demands of our respective careers. Intelligent, quick-witted, beautiful, she was everything I had ever desired in a partner. Our connection was instantaneous. Her laughter possessed a bright, infectious quality, a genuine warmth that drew me in. We fell in love quickly, deeply. But Sarah lived next door to Richard Sterling. They shared a history stretching back to childhood. He attended our wedding. Smiling. Offering congratulations. It felt like another victory seated. The impact on my life? It has shaped every pivotal decision. It has motivated me to strive relentlessly, to demand more, to never accept mediocrity. But it has also tainted my happiness, fueling resentment, bitterness, a profound emptiness. I became so consumed with outshining Richard Sterling that I neglected to truly live. I failed to appreciate what I possessed. I failed to cultivate the roles of good spouse, good parent. Now, decades later, the pattern is repeating itself. My son, the offspring of my failed marriage, is poised to marry Sterling's daughter. The ultimate defeat. It's as if Sterling has reached across the decades, bridged the chasms of animosity, to claim my very future. And the most galling part? Liam appears, happy. Genuinely, unequivocally happy. A sensation that has eluded me for years. Confrontation. The screen door whacked shut, its echo lost in the hush blanketing Liam's meticulously groomed yard. He sat on the patio, nursing a beer, face illuminated by his phone, a portrait of serene self-absorption. The artful arrangement of shrubbery, the lavish outdoor set, all reeked of Richard Sterling's impeccable, and expensive, taste. I skipped the niceties. You were in the know, weren't you? Liam's head snapped up, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. His brow then furrowed in that practiced semblance of innocence that once captivated Sarah. Knew what, Dad? Don't insult me with that charade, Liam. You were aware of Emily's parentage. The entire time. My voice, a low growl, resonated deep within. He shifted, his relaxed posture dissolving like a mirage in the desert. Of course, I knew. Emily's never made it a secret. And not a word. Not a single mention during your entire courtship. Or did you just relish watching me blunder along, planning to bankroll a party celebrating my son's union with Richard Sterling's offspring? Acrimony laced every syllable. Liam rose, finally meeting my eyes. A spark ignited there, defiance, perhaps, or the shadow of guilt. What's going on, Dad? What do you have against Emily? She's wonderful. She's my happiness. Happiness? I snorted. Is that all it requires? A comely visage and a bulging portfolio? You're marrying into my nemesis's clan, Liam. Does the gravity of that escape you? She's not her father, Dad. For God's sake, this isn't about your feud with Richard Sterling. It's about Emily and me. He raked a hand through his carefully sculpted hair, an action mirroring his mother when pushed to her limits. Really? Are you certain, Liam? Or did you spy an advantage here? A chance to finally one-up me? To flaunt how much grander your life is by attaching yourself to Richard Sterling's name? The accusations tumbled out, the product of long-simmering resentment. The air hung thick with our unspoken history, the weight of my expectations and his perceived shortcomings. That's absurd. Liam's voice cracked, wounded. How could you even conceive that? I adore Emily. I want to build a life with her. Her father being irrelevant. I yearned to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe my son wasn't capable of such calculated cruelty. But doubt gnawed, a persistent ache in my stomach. I recalled Liam's lifelong need for my approval, his constant quest for recognition. Had he ultimately discovered a way to attain it, even if it meant twisting the knife? Irrelevant? I echoed, the word dripping with scorn. You actually expect me to swallow that? You, for whom success has always been measured by net worth and standing? You, who spent your life attempting to surpass me, and consistently falling short? The blood visibly drained from Liam's face. He recoiled, as if struck. That's unfair, Dad. That's just vicious. Vicious? Is it? Or merely the unvarnished truth? You think I haven't noticed? The subtle disdain you've always harbored for me, for my struggles. Marrying Emily Sterling isn't about affection, Liam. It's about upward mobility. It's about validating yourself and perhaps, delivering one final jab to me. He stared, his gaze a turbulent mix of hurt and outrage. I'm not you, Dad. I'm not motivated by spite and envy. I genuinely desire contentment. The word struck a painful chord, sharper than I anticipated. They were a mirror reflecting my own inadequacies, my own failures as a parent. Was I so consumed by my competition with Sterling that I couldn't perceive my own son's happiness? Or was I so blinded by my own insecurities that I couldn't accept he could genuinely love someone like Emily? Then demonstrate it to me, Liam, I implored, my tone softening, laced with a desperate plea. Convince me this isn't some elaborate charade. Prove that you're not simply exploiting Emily to settle some score with me. He regarded me, his expression a complete cipher. Silence stretched, taut and heavy with unvoiced sentiments. The sun continued its descent, casting elongated shadows across the manicured lawn. I waited, my pulse throbbing, for him to articulate anything that would vanquish the mistrust that had taken root in my soul. But he simply turned away, the flawless silhouette of a man I scarcely recognized. Meeting Sterling. The oak of Sterling's office door possessed a density that belied its appearance. Each swirl in the grain seemed to mock me, a wooden effigy of Richard Sterling's disdain. I shoved it inward, the cool brass a stark contrast to my damp hand. Inside, the room mirrored my expectations, a monument to affluence and pedigree. Shelves groaned under the weight of untouched classics, trophies caught the light like captured stars, and a city panorama unfolded beyond his desk, a constant, glittering testament to his power. Sterling greeted me with a handshake, a grip that bordered on aggression, engineered to unsettle. His eyes, mirroring Emily's unnerving gray, offered no welcome, only a calculating assessment. Thomas, he drawled, the name a venomous courtesy. To what do I owe this unexpected intrusion? Let's dispense with the formalities, Richard, I countered, my tone sharper than intended. We both know the reason for my visit. He indicated a leather armchair. Please, have a seat. A drink? Scotch, perhaps. Or simply water. I'm not here for your hospitality, I stated, remaining upright. This concerns Liam and Emily. A fleeting expression, surprise perhaps, flickered across his face before settling back into its habitual smugness. Indeed? I was unaware their courtship warranted our discussion. It does now, I snapped back. Liam is marrying your daughter. Sterling finally settled into his chair, leaning back, his fingers forming a steeple. So I gather. A smile, predatory and unsettling, ghosted across his lips. And you object? Object? That's a vast understatement. I began to pace, anger fueling my strides. This isn't some game, Richard. This is about my son's well-being and your daughter's future. My daughter is perfectly capable of making her own choices, he replied, his voice taking on an edge. She's an intelligent, capable woman. And conveniently ignorant of the history between us? I challenged. Of the decades you've dedicated to undermining me, poaching deals, stealing clients, taking everything? Sterling's smile evaporated. That's all in the past, Thomas. Ancient history. Ancient history. You nearly ruined my company, Richard. You peddled lies about my business dealings. You. I broke off, fighting for composure. You made my life a torment. He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And you imagine yourself a blameless victim? Don't flatter yourself, Thomas. You fought just as dirty. We were adversaries, competitors. That's simply the nature of ambition. This transcends business, Richard. This is family. This is my son, on the verge of marrying your daughter. Can't you see the sheer irony? The potential for catastrophe? I felt perspiration gathering on my brow. The room pulsed with unspoken antagonism, with years of smoldering resentment. Catastrophe? Or a rather elegant resolution to our disagreements? He chuckled, a dry, mirthless sound. Perhaps our children will succeed where we stumbled. Perhaps they'll finally unite our empires. You believe this is about empires? I scoffed. This is about affection, Richard. Or it should be. But all I perceive is a continuation of our petty vendetta, acted out through our offspring. Sterling rose once more, moving to the window, presenting his back to me. Emily knows nothing of our past, Thomas. I've sheltered her. She views you as Liam's father, no more. His word struck me like a hammer blow. Emily remained in the dark, oblivious to the poisoned well she was about to drink from. You concealed this from her? I questioned, disbelief coloring my tone. He pivoted, his expression inscrutable. It was for her protection. Why saddle her with our burdens? And what will happen when she discovers the truth? I persisted. When she understands she's marrying into a family her father loathes. That, he breathed, his voice a dangerous undertone, is a gamble I'm prepared to take. Are you? The threat hung suspended, unspoken yet palpable. He was challenging me to unveil their history, to shatter Emily's innocent perceptions. Daring me to further jeopardize my bond with Liam. I stared at him, at the individual who had been my adversary for so long, and the horrifying truth dawned, this had nothing to do with commerce, or domains, or even vengeance. It was rooted in pride. His pride, and mine. And it threatened to annihilate everything. Emily's secret. Richard's booming laughter assaulted my ears in the yacht club's antiseptic atmosphere, each guffaw like a shard of glass dragged across a chalkboard. So, Thomas, which will it be? The benevolent patriarch, or the predictable, venomous creature I've always known lurks beneath? My teeth ground together, a bitter tang flooding my mouth. You reduce this to a game, Richard. This, play acting. Liam is marrying your daughter, my son. This is not some merger we can simply dissolve. He rotated the amber liquid in his glass, the ice chiming softly like a tiny, mocking orchestra. A game? Hardly, Thomas. This concerns Emily. Her well-being. A concept utterly alien to you, consumed as you are by ancient grievances. The barb found its mark, a precise and familiar sting. Spare me the selfless father act, Richard. You've always played people like pawns, orchestrated events for your gain. Perhaps, he conceded, his gaze unwavering and sharp. But in this instance, my triumph is Emily's contentment. She is, genuinely happy, Thomas. Oblivious to our shared history. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken truths. She doesn't suspect. The question escaped before I could leash it. Richard gave a slight shake of his head, a fleeting vulnerability softening his features. No. I've shielded her. Always have. To her, you are simply Liam's father. Sterling versus Reed, the shady deals, the betrayals. Sarah, all are unknown. The casual mention of Sarah, my late wife, felt like a sucker punch to the gut. The wound was always raw, a perpetual reminder of my deepest failures. And you believe you can sustain this illusion indefinitely? I intend to try, Richard stated, steel returning to his voice. For her sake. She deserves tranquility, Thomas. A life unsullied by the poison we've cultivated for decades. He gazed out at the yacht swaying gently in the harbor, his expression an impenetrable mask. Emily, she's a kind soul, Thomas. Pure. She loves your son deeply. This union, it has the potential to be magnificent. Untainted by our ancient feud. My thoughts spun, reeling from the implications. Emily, blissfully unaware of the malice that festered beneath the surface, excitedly anticipating her future with my son. And Richard, the man I despised, suddenly cast as the guardian of innocence. You're proposing I become complicit in this deception? I'm suggesting you prioritize another's happiness for once, Thomas. Consider the ramifications before you unleash your spite on two young people who deserve better. He took a prolonged swallow of his drink, his eyes holding mine in a vice-like grip. Tell her, Thomas. Reveal everything. Expose us both. But steel yourself to witness her world shatter. Prepare to see the light extinguished from her eyes. Can you bear that burden? The question lingered in the air, demanding an answer I wasn't ready to give. Could I inflict such pain? The prospect of hurting Emily, of destroying her illusions, was deeply unsettling. It was one thing to strike out at Richard, to attempt to sabotage Liam's joy out of sheer spite, but to deliberately inflict agony on an innocent. A cold film of sweat slicked my skin. This was no longer a simple game of rivalry between Richard and myself. This involved Emily, Liam, the potential for irreversible damage. Richard rose, his movements precise and deliberate. Ponder it, Thomas. Weigh what's truly at stake. Then, make your choice. He placed his glass on the bar, the soft chime amplifying the sudden silence. I'll see you, at the wedding. He turned and departed, leaving me alone with my turbulent thoughts, crushed beneath the weight of his words. I remained there for an eternity, it seemed, staring out at the darkening harbor. Emily's radiant smile burned into my mind's eye. What course of action should I take? Expose Richard, risking the destruction of Emily's happiness, and potentially alienating my son? Or bury the truth, perpetuate the lie, and allow this charade to continue unabated? The decision rested solely on me. And for the first time in a long time, I lacked the certainty of knowing the ethical path. The bitter solace of my animosity was overwhelmed by a creeping dread, a premonition of impending disaster. And whatever decision I made, the aftermath would be devastating. A compromise. The air in the study hung thick as a shroud. Richard, true to form, remained stonily silent, his jaw a sharp edge, eyes like chips of flint. He radiated a predator's stillness. A trickle of perspiration traced my temple, the gleaming mahogany desk suddenly a suffocating presence, reeking of wealth. Then Liam's voice cut through it, strained yet retaining a familiar, almost imploring sweetness. Dad. Mr. Sterling, perhaps there's room to negotiate. Negotiate? The word felt alien, almost insulting within those walls. A derisive snort escaped Richard, a sound that reverberated with simmering contempt. Negotiate what, Liam? The magnitude of my public shaming? The extent to which I'll be fleeced for this spectacle? Liam winced, but persisted. Maybe the spectacle isn't necessary. We could curtail it. A more modest ceremony. Intimate. Just, close friends and family. He angled a glance towards Emily, who seemed absorbed by the intricate patterns of the Persian rug, as if searching for answers woven into its fibers. Something meaningful, he finished softly. The atmosphere wavered, a subtle shift in the static electricity. Richard's gaze flickered, a hint of calculation, perhaps, or even, miraculously, a thread of reluctant assent. Modest, Richard echoed, his tone deceptively mild. Define modest, Liam. Liam inhaled deeply. Forget the grand ballroom. The Sterling smaller hall would suffice. Or, even an entirely different location. Something less, grandiose. He stumbled slightly on the word, knowing it struck directly at Richard's vanity. Then came the suggestion that knotted my insides. And, perhaps both families could contribute equitably. A joint effort, demonstrating our mutual joy for Emily and me. Showing that we're uniting. Uniting. The word left a bitter taste. Align with Richard Sterling. The man who pilfered my ambitions, my self-assurance, perhaps even Sarah's affections, so many years prior. Richard's silence stretched, an agonizing impasse. I could practically hear the cogs whirring in his mind, tallying the gains and losses. Public perception was paramount. A scaled-down, jointly financed wedding could be portrayed as an act of magnanimity, a symbol of two powerful dynasties converging. But it would also demand relinquishing total control, sharing the limelight, and, heaven forbid, acknowledging my existence as something other than a regrettable footnote. Emily finally looked up, her expression a delicate balance of hope and trepidation. Dad? Your thoughts? Richard swiveled towards her, his features softening, the viper momentarily dormant. Darling, your happiness eclipses all else. He hesitated, then, with a noticeable effort, addressed me. Read. Your perspective. All eyes turned, pinning me in place. The weight of their expectations pressed down, a suffocating burden. I met Liam's pleading gaze. Then Emily's, brimming with precarious optimism. Finally, Richard's, cold and calculating. It's a gracious proposal, Liam, I managed, the words feeling leaden. A smaller wedding, it could be, pleasant. More heartfelt. I avoided Richard's scrutiny. And, yes, shared funding. That's equitable. Richard inclined his head slowly, his face an inscrutable mask. Very well. We shall explore the options. But understand this, Reed. My daughter's contentment is sacrosanct. Should this compromise jeopardize that in any respect, the arrangement is null and void. The meeting dissolved soon after. Liam, clearly relieved, ushered Emily away, his voice already animated with discussions of venues and guest lists. Richard offered a clipped nod and retreated into his inner sanctum, leaving me stranded in the hallway, the stifling silence swarming around me once more. I exited the Sterling estate feeling strangely detached. The evening air possessed a certain sharpness, yet my skin felt slick with a cold sweat. Liam's compromise had bought us some respite, perhaps. But it had also unleashed a tempest of potential problems. Joint funding entailed collaboration, communication, enforced proximity to Richard Sterling. And it necessitated facing Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not since the wedding plans became concrete. The prospect of discussing seating charts and floral arrangements with her, with Richard's shadow looming nearby, stirred a queasy dread within me. As I drove homeward, the city light streaking by in a blur, I couldn't dismiss the sensation that I was walking directly into a trap. Liam, in his wide-eyed innocence, believed he was paving the way toward reconciliation. But I knew Richard Sterling far too well. He didn't understand reconciliation. He understood conquest. And I was about to become his pawn in a game whose rules remained shrouded in darkness. Letting go. The phone seemed to pulse against my clammy skin. Richard's thinly veiled aggression, coated with that infuriatingly polished tone, lingered in my mind. Had he really prevailed, again? Liam's voice, laced with apprehension and hope, cut through my turbulent thoughts. Dad? So, you're okay with dialing things back? With the intimate affair? Intimate. As if reducing the scale of the extravagant celebration diminished the sting. As if it negated the reality of sharing my son's wedding stage with Richard Sterling, masked as a compromise. I surveyed the living room. Sunbeams painted the air with dust motes, accentuating the desolation. The silence was a tangible weight, crushing me. Was this the culmination of it all? Decades dedicated to building a life, a company, all powered by a rivalry now poised to poison my son's joy. Dad? Liam pressed, a note of worry creeping into his voice. He deserved so much more. Emily, too, likely, even if the notion of Richard's lineage intertwining with mine still sparked a visceral aversion. I conjured an image of Liam as a boy, all raw knees and boundless vitality, his face radiant from a simple catch. I recalled the swell of pride watching him command the stage, the quiet joy of aiding him through algebra. Those were the touchstones, moments untainted by Richard Sterling, fueled only by the profound connection between father and son. Yes, Liam, I rasped. I'm fine with it. Whatever brings you and Emily contentment. Relief flooded his tone, thick and obvious. Really? Oh, Dad, that's fantastic. Thanks. I detected an upbeat cadence I hadn't heard in weeks. It was a sound I'd longed for, one that chipped away at the fortress I'd erected around my heart. But Liam continued, a thread of hesitation entering his voice. About the financial aspect. Here it comes, I surmised. The inevitable parley. Richard was likely already wielding his influence, whispering suggestions into Emily's ear, subtly shaping Liam's expectations. Richard. Mr. Sterling, rather, volunteered to shoulder a greater proportion of the costs, Liam said. Given the downsizing and all. My fist tightened. The nerve of that. No, I interjected sharply. I'll handle my portion. You and Emily decide on your vision, and I'll make it a reality. I could practically feel Richard's indignation radiating through the phone lines. That smug charlatan probably craved complete sway. He desired to orchestrate every detail, guaranteeing his imprint on every facet of the celebration. I wouldn't afford him that victory. Dad, are you sure? It's a substantial sum. Liam, I'm certain. This is your wedding. My sole concern is your happiness. And Emily's, naturally. The words felt stilted, yet I meant them. Or, at least, I was striving to. After the call ended, I ambled to the window and gazed out at the garden. The roses bloomed riotously, their vivid hues a stark contrast to the encroaching gloom that had enveloped my existence. Letting go. A concept I'd always fought against. Releasing Sarah, abandoning my aspirations, relinquishing the simmering resentment that had sustained me for so long. But perhaps, just perhaps, the time had come. Time to bury the animosity, not for Richard's benefit, but for Liam's future. Time to prioritize my son's happiness over my own rancor. It wouldn't be painless. Facing Richard, watching him revel in the limelight of his daughter's nuptials, would be a unique form of torture. But the vision of Liam, beaming with genuine delight, was enough to quiet the chorus of bitterness. I closed my eyes and drew a deep breath. It was a beginning. A tentative, shaky leap forward. The path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, a flicker of optimism ignited within me. Mrs. Higgins' wisdom. The air in Mrs. Higgins' sunroom, thick with the perfume of orchids, always soothed my frayed nerves. Those exotic blooms, clinging to their arboreal supports, spoke volumes of her patient dedication. I settled into the yielding wicker, the grandfather clock's measured cadence a reassuring anchor in the stillness. Beyond the window panes, the October gale whispered through maples, showering the lawn with scarlet confetti. A taxing week, Thomas. Her voice was a gentle hand on my soul. Explanations were unnecessary, she saw the weariness etched on my face, the defeated droop of my posture. Always. I summoned a weak smile. An understatement. Wedding preparations. Richard Sterling's looming presence, it's overwhelming. A soft, knowing chuckle escaped her lips. Richard Sterling. Still a spectre at the feast, is he? I exhaled heavily. Absurd, isn't it? After all this time, he remains a barb under my skin. Sometimes, I question my very identity without that perpetual friction. She poured tea, the delicate chime of porcelain a counter-melody to the storm within me. Perhaps it's time you discovered who you are independent of him, Thomas. For your well-being, and Liam's. The steam from the cup, laced with bergamot, swirled invitingly. I sipped, the warmth easing the tension. I'm trying, honestly. I foolishly agreed to foot the entire bill for the wedding. Succumbed to Liam's Sterling-esque vision of grandeur. And that leaves you feeling, she prompted, her gaze unwavering. Strangely unburdened, yet simultaneously bitter. I sense manipulation, even knowing Liam doesn't intend it. Sterling continues to score points, even from the sidelines. Sometimes, Thomas, she murmured, victory lies in relinquishing the game altogether. Choosing contentment over ego. Her word struck a raw nerve. Obsessed with surpassing Sterling, I'd neglected genuine priorities, Liam, Sarah, my own inner harmony. I sent Liam an invoice, I blurted, the confession escaping me. For his upbringing. Every bump, bruise, and school outing, every single meal. I know, petty. Even cruel. Mrs. Higgins offered no reprimand, merely a thoughtful nod. And Liam's reaction? He was floored. Hurt. He ended the call. I raked my hand through my hair, guilt churning in my stomach. I've made a mess of things, haven't I? Mistakes are inherent to the human experience, Thomas. Redemption lies in our response. A twinkle lit her eyes. Perhaps this bill, perhaps it served as an unwelcome catalyst, forcing a reckoning with unresolved history. I doubt it, I countered, skepticism clouding my tone. I only wanted him to acknowledge my sacrifices, what I forfeited. Sacrifice is intertwined with love, Thomas. However, love should be freely given, without expectation of repayment. Her pronouncement resonated deeply. I had become so engrossed in accounting, quantifying my efforts, that I'd overlooked the simple joy of fatherhood. My animosity toward Sterling had tainted my relationship with my son. I need to apologize, I declared, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. To Liam, to Sarah. Express my true feelings. A warm, radiant smile bloomed on Mrs. Higgins' face. An excellent beginning, Thomas. But remember, absolution is reciprocal. Be prepared to extend it to yourself as well. I lingered for another hour, listening, learning from her quiet insight. Departing, I noted the wind had subsided, the sunset painting the heavens with vibrant hues. The air was bracing, carrying the scent of burning wood and decaying leaves. As I walked toward my car, a spark of hope ignited within me. Perhaps reconciliation wasn't beyond reach. Maybe, with diligence, sincerity, and forgiveness, I could rebuild the fractured bonds with my son and ex-wife. Maybe, I could finally discard the corrosive resentment that had plagued me for decades and embrace a future of love, acceptance, and authentic connection. The prospect of facing Richard Sterling at the wedding still stirred a familiar disquiet, but its nature had shifted. It wasn't a contest, a battle to be won. It was an opportunity to demonstrate to Liam my willingness to subordinate my ego, bury old grievances, and prioritize his contentment. En route home, I dialed Liam's number. No answer. I left a message, Liam, it's Dad. I owe you an apology. Please call when you have a moment. The ensuing silence was profound, but I knew I'd initiated the first step. The journey ahead would be arduous, but, for the first time in years, I sensed a flicker of optimism that I might find my way back to my family. Maybe, just maybe, I could learn to forgive, and in doing so, finally learn to truly live. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments, I'd love to hear from you.